everyone, I'm Megan Claire and thank you for tuning in to this week's video blog. So as promised, this week is a video Q&A. I've been collecting all of your questions over this past week on travel and I'm about to answer them all for you. Before we start though, this week's shout out goes out to Luke. Thank you for all of your amazing computer technical support when I haven't had a clue what I'm doing. It's been amazing and you've been a huge help. So today's first question comes from Kimmy, who runs the amazing travel blog Afterglow, and her question is, what is one thing that I can't live without while traveling? Okay, so the answer to this is my smartphone. I am absolutely addicted to technology and my smartphone is the one thing that I cannot live without while traveling. I actually think that owning a smartphone is one of the most important things a traveller can own, mainly because it has so many different features. I don't actually use my phone for calling when I'm overseas. It's ridiculous the amount of international costs that phone companies place on you. However, I generally turn my signal off and use the phone for, it can be good for calculator, camera, video recorder, time converter, currency converter, and even for GPS and navman. It's also great for the internet if you have Wi-Fi reception around. You can also download some pretty amazing apps on your smartphone before you actually leave, like Translator. You can have Google Translate. I have one on my phone which you can go through, pick the country, pick your phrase, and then it speaks for you. It's amazing. So the next question comes from Becky Hall from the travel blog Leaving Cairo, and she asks how I cope with carrying multiple currencies around at the same time. So if you're traveling for long periods of time and you're traveling consistently, you're going to be going through a lot of different countries and you're going to be experiencing a lot of different currencies. So you need to be able to keep your cash separate. And I do this by keeping everything segregated in different parts of my wallet or my bag. So for instance, this little bag I bought in Costa Rica and it's amazing because it has 4 different pockets. So for instance, you can keep your credit cards in here with your euros or your pounds in this pocket, and it's as simple as just keeping everything segregated. When I get home, I like to collect my currency and keep it in little organized bags so I know exactly what I've got. I have quite a lot of bags and currency left over because I figure if I'm traveling and keep traveling, then I'm probably going to be using it at some point, and I prefer to keep the £10 that I have for my trip. Same thing with a lot of like wallets that you can get to carry under your clothes, like security wallets. This is particularly amazing little pouch. It's got a ton of different variety of places to put things. You can put notes down here, there's another little pocket in the front, there's a pocket in the side. So just keep everything segregated and make sure you've got a wallet with a lot of different compartments. So this next question comes from Justin, who runs the travel blog True Nomads, and he asks how I cope with living in the US with a funny accent. Actually, it works out really well for me. It's this instant popularity that I would have killed for in high school. All Americans seem to love Australia, and it's this amazing mystical place in a far off land that they would always love to go to, but for some of them it just seems like it's actually a little bit too far away for them to ever go. So when they hear my accent and find out I'm from Australia, I guess they're a bit fascinated and ask me a ton of different stereotypical questions like, how was it riding kangaroos to school and work, which we don't do. So the next question comes from JR Real, who runs the Drifters blog, and his question is, have I ever been somewhere where I didn't think I'd enjoy and end up loving it? Not really. I plan all of my travel and I generally try not to go to a place that I don't think I'm going to enjoy. That being said, the reverse has been true, so I've thought I was absolutely going to love Paris in particular, and I ended up really not liking it that much. Like, it's an amazing city in its own right and it's great to see it and experience at least once, maybe even twice. But I felt that it was very overhyped and just a little bit too dirty and overcrowded for me. Didn't really live up to the expectation that I had of just phenomenal, amazing romance. So Dana from Copenhagen said she'd love to hear my hiking tips and are there any hiking shoes I recommend. So in terms of hiking shoes, I highly recommend Mammoth. I bought this shoe in 2010 when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and it got me through the whole climb, and it's now 2013 and I'm still wearing this on hikes. It's an amazingly sturdy shoe and I've had absolutely no problems with it. Extremely comfortable. As I said, really sturdy. This is probably the most expensive shoe that I've ever bought in my life. It was about $200 for the pair, but it's by far the best purchase I've ever made. In terms of tips for hiking, from personal experience, the number one tip that I would recommend is to leave your hiking plan with someone back home and call them when you get off the trail. Last year we went hiking through the Australian outback and we didn't leave a plan with anyone back home. Unfortunate circumstance happened where my husband's father actually passed away while we were on the trail, and because no one had our plan and no one knew where we were, nobody could contact us. So it ended up being that my father used his, I guess, common sense to call the rangers in the Northern Territory, which is where we were, and had one of the rangers go immense distances, leaving notes at like every single hiking stop for us to call. We ended up calling on a satellite phone after we caught up with one of the rangers, but take it from me, leave a plan with someone back home, because if something does happen, then they know where to find you. In terms of technical hiking tips, if you drink often so that you stay hydrated, and if you pack enough water for the whole day, then your pack will get lighter as you go through the day, so that's always a bonus. And my last tip in terms of hiking would be that short hair, recently cut, is much more manageable for hiking, and it's a lot less inviting for bugs and little critters to come and live in. So Esther from La Photojournalista on Facebook asked me to describe the perfect travel plan. And this one, I think it's very dependent on the person, because the perfect travel plan to me might not be the perfect travel plan to you. But sometimes I think the perfect travel plan is not having a plan at all. I like rocking up to a city and immersing myself completely in the culture, which to me that means going and meeting the locals, and then in doing that you find a ton of different things to do. For instance, when we were in Italy, we made a ton of new friends, and the hostel owner and his family actually took 5 of us out to a football game, which was pretty amazing. But whereas if we'd had plans, we wouldn't have been flexible enough to adapt. So I really think that sometimes the perfect travel plan is a flexible one, and one that you can change as you go. So Carissa from Carissa Abroad has asked, how do I even decide where to start on my travels? And that's a really good question, because the world is so incredibly big and I want to go everywhere, and I want to see everything, and I want to do it all now. Of course that's not possible, and you can't see and do everything at the same time, so where the hell do you start? When I'm planning a trip, I try and generally scope out the different opportunities that are available. So for instance, if there's a weekend deal happening on a travel website, which is 50% off travel to Asia, then I'd think very seriously about going to Asia. Or if I just found out that I knew somebody who lived in America, I'd potentially try and plan a trip to America to go and see them and save on accommodation at the same time. So I generally like to try and take advantage of the different opportunities that are available at any one given point. Failing that, pull out an atlas and open it to a random page. I am going here. I'm going out of our solar system, apparently. That one might be a bit hard. So Tamara Lowe asks, how do you stay safe while traveling in poorer countries? And that's actually a really great question. And it comes down to being street smart. The world isn't an unsafe place, and you just need to keep your wits about you and be aware of your surroundings. The world's actually a lot safer than it ever has been, and yes, there are horrible things that happen, and yes, terrorism happens around the globe, but horrible things happen everywhere. So you're just as likely to be unsafe in your own city walking home from work one night as you are in a poorer country overseas. I've never felt unsafe at all on my travels over the last few years, and a lot of the time I was traveling as a single female. So you just need to be street smart. Like, every country has areas that you avoid, so make sure that you make yourself aware of that and you research before you go. Be aware of scams like pickpocketing. Leave your passport and tickets in a hotel safe and carry only photocopies with you. Therefore, if something does happen and you do, for instance, get mugged or robbed, then you still have your original passport. That's your ticket out of the country, so you don't want to lose that. And stuff like only getting into official taxi cabs, it's all about being street smart, and you shouldn't have any difficulties at all. So Charlie from Wanderlusters UK has asked, what are my travel essentials? So as mentioned before, my smartphone is high on my list. I also travel with my laptop, which is admittedly a pain because it's a bit of a brick. I've had this laptop since 2007 and I'm surprised it hasn't died yet. I need to get a smaller one. Also travel with credit cards. Because they can get you out of a bind generally wherever you are in the world. I have a few different credit cards just in case of emergencies. I also travel with my Swiss Army knife because it has everything that you would ever need to get you out of any kind of situation. And I generally also like to take those little inflatable airport pillows with you wherever you go, because you never know when that's going to come in handy, especially if you're backpacking. And lastly, Jackie from Canberra asked what was my best and worst last minute decision that I've ever made. So in terms of the best last minute decision I've ever made, I'm going to go ahead and say that that one was in Kenya, when I decided to take a very handsome American gentleman who I'd met earlier that evening back to my room, and we're now married. In terms of the worst last minute decision I've ever made, it's a bit harder, and I'm going to be a bit cheesy and go ahead and say that there are no worst last minute decisions in life, because everything is a learning experience. So thanks so much everybody for tuning in, and I hope you found some kind of valuable travel tip from the video today. Next week's video blog, we're taking you to Vegas. Love you all. Bye.